Good evening, everybody. We are going to be answering your food and gig delivery questions here tonight, talking DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, Instacart, and anything else that you want to talk about regarding food and gig delivery. I thought I had fixed the light thing, but apparently not. We're going to get this figured out. I guess this is the correct light setup that I have to do so it doesn't stream across. So you can go ahead and post your questions in the chat. I've got 10 questions that I'm going to answer, and then we'll get to any of the chat questions at the end. But want to welcome you all here. My name is Craig. Welcome to A Side of Hustle. The goal of this channel is to move 10,000 people from stupidly broken to fully free in soul and heart, in mind and strength and wallet. So as you come on in, please hit that like, hit that subscribe. If you're not watching this live, you're watching on replay, post your comments and questions in the comment section, and maybe your question will be featured the next time that we do this. Last night, we actually did a whole 10 Q&A session about eBay. So tonight is about food and gig delivery. So we're going to just hop right in. Question number one, when you first started on DoorDash, how did you figure out which orders to accept and which ones to decline without tanking your acceptance rate? All right. So the one of the things with asking, like, when you first started questions, is these platforms change so much. DoorDash is significantly different now than it was 2.5 years ago, and it's just kind of almost not comparable. But let me just take the second part of that question and address it first. Talking about without tanking an acceptance rate. Don't worry about acceptance rates when you start. Don't worry about any of the games that any of these apps want you to play when you first begin. Solely focus on figuring out your market, figuring out your area, and taking the best possible orders that you can when you are first beginning. So how do you do this? Well, there's a lot of different ways. So let me break it into pure pickup and delivery ones, and then grocery where you're actually shopping for other people. So for pure pickup and delivery, I would look at focusing on orders that are 5 miles or less. Um, you're going to see numbers that initially are going to look really good. You might see a $20 order, but it has to go 18 miles or 20 miles or something like that. Focus on short deliveries. And the one thing that I would say that I probably pay more attention to now than almost any other thing is, where is the drop off location? If the drop off is close to other good restaurants, then you could be willing to take a little less money because the likelihood of you getting an order is not there. If your drop off is far away from other restaurants, then I would be looking to get at least $2 a mile. So, but if it's a quick pickup and drop off and it's going to set you up right where you are, then you can certainly consider $1 per mile for that. Okay, so what's the principle? Well, at least $1 a mile. I would say generally 5 miles or less, and delivery to a good place that's, it doesn't have to be right at a restaurant or obviously something like that, but within a mile of other restaurants that you can get to quickly. So hopefully you get another order quickly. The biggest time suck in food and gig delivery beyond waiting at restaurants is just waiting for orders to come to your phone. And if you have to drive 2, 3, 4 miles after you do your drop off to even be in an area where you're going to get another order, it's definitely not something that you want to do. Okay. When you're dealing with shopping orders, this is what I would recommend for shopping orders. I recommend 1 to 15 is the thing. $1 an item for a shopping order, $2 a mile, because you're almost always going to have to drive somewhere and then come back to the store, and $15 minimum for your orders. Now, again, this is just for starting. If you're trying to figure out what's a good order on Instacart, or for if you're doing a shopping order on DoorDash, 1 to 15, $1 an item, $2 a mile, $15 or more total. So if you're shopping for 27 items, I would want it to be $27. That's just for when you're slower at the beginning. As you get better, as you get faster, then you can certainly take other orders. Now, there's exceptions for that. I have a whole video on that principle on the channel. It's the 1 to 15. Let me just see if I can pull that up really quick. I can maybe just throw a link in the chat. Let's try. Let me see if I can find this really quick. All right. Well, so let me do this. All right. So first of all, this is how I choose. I have a video on how do I choose the best DoorDash orders. Now I'm not 100% sure if this is. Oh no, come on. Where are you going with that? I'm not 100% sure if this is completely updated with the newest updates, but it still will give you a good starting point here. Um, Best DoorDash orders. Here we go. That's here. And then let's go. And then here, how do I choose the best Instacart batches? I'm going to pull that here too, where here we go. Because yeah, there's a lot more than I can cover in this video. Best Instacart batches. So hopefully, if you're watching this on replay, you'll still be able to see these links. Okay, a couple of links that should help with that. Question number 2. If you are doing thousands of deliveries, how do you avoid burnout? Still keep a good attitude, especially when you're dealing with rude customers, long waits at restaurants. I'm going to tell you that if you have unresolved issues in your life and you have things that you're trying to process and work through, food and gig delivery is one of the best ways to confront it because it's basically you and your mind for long periods of time. And so it was actually quite healing for me the first, especially year and a half of doing food and gig delivery, of having to work through things, having to work through anger, having to work through frustration, a whole bunch of things that were broken inside of me. And it's a great way to just take things head on and say, okay, yeah, look, I've got problems, I've got things I need to fix, and doing that. So are you going to burn out if you do this consistently for a long period of time? Yeah, probably you will, simply because it, or at least I would say, especially if it's not something that you want to be doing on a regular basis. If it's just kind of a, you're forced into this, it's very easy to get frustrated very quickly. Um, so, so how do you avoid burnout? Well, you've got to address whatever things are broken inside of you first. And I know that kind of maybe is a little deep for thinking food and gig delivery, but I can promise you that most people who are angry and upset with food and gig delivery probably have something majorly wrong with them. And this is not to say that you'll never have, a frustrating day once you fix everything on the inside, but you need to fix what's going on inside of you if you're getting burnt out. The other thing is you need to have your exit plan, at least the strategy to your exit plan. This is one of the things that I wish I had started sooner. Is I originally only got into food and gig delivery as a temporary thing, but then it kind of took over and it forced me out of the other project that I was really trying to just fund. And I've gotten back around to it. But right now, the goal is food and gig delivery pays the bills while I'm developing my eBay business on the side and allowing that to be self sustainable. So I'm basically working 2 full-time jobs right now. And so the food and gig delivery that pays the bills for today, but the eBay store that pays the bills for tomorrow. And so, but that's the exit plan. The exit plan is like my goal would be a year from now that I'm just doing food and gig delivery for fun every once in a while, not out of necessity with that. And so that's, I would say, a huge part of doing that. If you're dealing and you get especially frustrated with like long waits at restaurants, Queen of Hustling, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. If you get really frustrated with long waits at restaurants, the best thing I would encourage you to do is actually just use that time to network and talk to restaurant workers. One of the biggest helps that you will possibly have in this industry is when you have restaurant workers, hosts, hostesses that are on your side. And the best way to do it is they deal with so many impatient food delivery drivers, so many people who just treat them like garbage, that if you can be nice and friendly and make jokes and not get frustrated and upset, and you might have to say, hey, sorry, I got to walk away. This has been too long of a wait. You might have to be assertive, but you can still do that in a polite way. Don't get angry and frustrated with the host or the hostess or who's ever helping you, because they're not the ones cooking the meal. They have no control over that. They're not the one who sent the time that you had to pick the order up or sent the order to you. That's not them. So use that time to build relationships, or if you have the opportunity to do so, use the wait time to build your other hustle, to build whatever it is. So like I'll use, if I'm waiting at a restaurant, I'll be working with responding to comments on YouTube, sending offers out on eBay, accepting offers on eBay, working on a short for YouTube, brainstorming things, working on some other plan or something else like this. Yeah. Um, the better you can build those relationships, like Queen of Hustling is saying here, the better you can build those relationships, they're going to pay off in the long run. I mean, I have so many people now throughout my town who they don't know my name, but they know me by face, right? And so when I come in, I get the smile, I get the best service, I get told the truth on what the waiting time is, because they're most of the time they're going to tell you just a couple minutes. They're not telling you the truth. They're just saying that to get you off their back. But I get real answers because I've taken the time to cultivate relationships. And most people think that these people are your enemies. Um, and it's just not the case. So, there are, I guess the way, I'm going to see if I can find the video here. Because I have a video on this. Um, Let me see if I can pull it up here. I can't find it, but I do have a video about turning enemies into friends on the channel. And I mean, if you can take the time to build relationships with people, even build relationships with other drivers, there's lots of other drivers out there who have questions and or who can help you. I mean, I learned one of my favorite restaurants to pick up from. I learned by just building that relationship. Yeah, Lisa, how's it going? Catering has helped with building relationships. Absolutely. Um, Yeah, and because you can't control things about the speed of when you're sent to these places or whatever, but you can control what you do with that time. So if you're getting frustrated with long wait times, you can make the long term decision of like, hey, I know this restaurant always has a long wait. I'm just not going to take it, or I'll take it and after 10 minutes I'm canceling. I'm just not going to do that. But on the broader side of things, if it's worth the wait, use it for something productive. That's basically what it is. Don't just sit there and scroll YouTube shorts, unless you're coming and scrolling my shorts and giving, that do that. But otherwise, like do something productive. Work on your next side hustle. Work on networking. Check in on a friend. Like do whatever. Just don't waste the time in between, and that's going to help a lot. So, by the way, if you guys have questions that are watching live, type them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. I've got 10 I'm going to run through, and then we'll take any other questions that come through the chat. If you're watching on replay, you can post your questions in the comment section and maybe they will be featured the next time we do question and answer. So we did question and answer on eBay last night. Tonight is on food and gig delivery. So yeah, here we go. So next question number 3. How much of a difference does having faith or prayer make in your daily delivery routine? Like, does it change how you handle slow nights or stressful shifts? So I'm to the point now, I rarely have what I would consider a stressful shift because most of the stress of food and gig delivery is just not knowing what to expect. And the longer you do this, the less an unexpected thing is going to creep up on you. Like most of the time, I know if I'm going into a restaurant, I know it's going to be a 1 to 2 minute wait, a 5 minute wait, or a 10 plus minute wait. Like I just know these things because I've done it so much in my market. So but on the broader thing, the faith, I don't find it changes too much on that side, but it does change significantly about how I interact and treat other people. And again, a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've talked about on this channel in a variety of ways, but I know some of this is kind of a newer interaction. But I used to look at people as objects that I would use to get something out of them to benefit me. And now I look at people as opportunities for me to help, to bless, to encourage, to put a smile on their face. And so, if you're doing lots of catering pickups from the same restaurants on a regular basis, that's going to be a thing. If you're checking out and you do lots of Instacart or shopping at the same grocery store on a regular basis, you're gonna build those relationships. So I've got one of the cashiers that I talked to is a big Yankees fan, and I'm a Mets fan, and so we just kind of always have a fun conversation every time I'm going through the checkout line. And so it's like all of a sudden, like my faith makes me view other people as people and not as somebody that just can help me get to what I want to be. And that's true with the customer delivery too. Like sometimes, I've had a couple of conversations in the last week with some ladies that are like 80 plus, maybe even 90 plus, and just good, fun conversations and different things. And, one lady was in her, she had just had some surgery and she was riding around. She's like in like an assisted living place or whatever. And I said, I guess you're out from weightlifting and boxing for the next week. And she said, yeah, I'll be back at it in a few weeks. And just kind of having that smile and doing that thing. So looking at all these things these people as opportunities. Now, some people don't care about that. They don't want that. They just want you to leave the food and walk away. But I'm going to tell you that if you have your eyes open to things and you're willing to actually look at people, you're going to probably come across a lot more opportunities to bless people doing food and gig delivery than what you think you would. So, anyway, many times when Dash sent too early, talk to someone, food truck, food delivery, and he understands I'm one of their favorite. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you do this long enough, make sure that your favorite restaurants, that you are a favorite of the people that work at your favorite restaurants. Like if there's a restaurant that's a honey hole for you or a grocery store or whatever, when you walk in, people should be happy to see you, not frustrated to see you again. All right. Question number 4. I'm brand new to Instacart. What's one rookie mistake you see new shoppers making all the time, and how do you avoid it? All right. So I might take a little bit of heat for this, but I think most people are shopping their Instacarts too fast. At least based on what I see on a lot of what people report on Facebook and different things like that. People will literally like look for an item for like 5 seconds. And if they don't see it, they mark it as done. Now, first of all, Instacart doesn't want you to do that. Instacart wants you to put in the work. But I would say like I'm constantly looking and I am finding a replacement no matter what. Like I was looking at my stats because I'm constantly I just got back to Diamond Shopper on Instacart. Um, I got there just in time, September 30th. So now I'm Diamond for the next few months. And so I wanted to show though with so for my unrequested, these are my stats here. I don't know how well you're going to be able to see that there. If you look at the bottom, unrequested refunds, I'm at 3. Okay. In other words, there have only been 3 times out of 3,327 items, only 3 times I couldn't find a viable replacement for a customer. Like, is that not crazy? Like, that's how good you need to be. You need to put in the work. Instacart wants you to find something, and unless the customer specifically states they don't want replacements, and they've actually marked it in the app, not just in a note, they actually have it in the app like that. Unless they're specifically saying, I don't want a replacement, Instacart wants you to replace and you want to replace. And here's the thing, the worst case scenario is you make the replacement and after checkout, the customer says, hey, I really don't want it. They didn't get it in time. Then you just refund it and you just call Instacart and you have it done. Um, you know, I'm not the fastest shopper in the world, though I have gotten my average pick time under a minute now. It might have gone back over today. Exactly at a minute. I'm at 60 seconds an item. And I cheated a little bit this summer on having my kids help me with some of that. But since then, I've been able to maintain it. We got it down to about 45 seconds an item when my kids were helping me a little bit this summer. But still, 60 seconds an item. So I still think I'm among the top half of the faster shoppers. But you definitely want to be finding those replacements and not going too fast. I think a lot of people go too fast and they're not willing to put in the work. And yes, there is a speed thing, but the amount of increased tips that I get on a regular basis on Instacart, there's a lot of Instacart that I really like. It's not, I don't know if I even have a favorite platform, but there's a lot of it that I really like. I like that I'm really helping people, and you are much more likely to be rewarded for good customer service. Kevin, how's it going? Tornado, how's it going? Gone in 60 seconds. That's what people said after the tornado came through the garden, I guess. So, there you have a huge opportunity to really be a blessing to the customer on Instacart. And if they didn't tell you they want a refund, then find another item and do it in a way that's smart. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, speed is good if you're finding all the items, but if you can't find it, take an extra 15, 20, 30 seconds and find it. Your average time isn't good. And if you want the hack, I firmly believe in pre-shopping. I will pre-shop all the produce before I start the timer. The timer matters. Instacart has stated that the timer matters. So don't start your time until you've shopped everything that you logically can before you start it. Now, sometimes you got to start it because you need to find a replacement or different things, but I will pre-shop all the produce. If possible, I'll pre-shop all the deli. If the food isn't ready for pickup, I will let them know that I'm here so they can finish prepping the food or move it up in order. So I'm a firm believer in that. That's just kind of a side hack on that. If you guys have any other food gig delivery questions, please post those. We'll get them down at the end. If you're watching on replay, again, please hit that like, hit that subscribe. And then you can also post your comments in the comments section, your questions in the comment section, and maybe you'll be featured on the next episode. All right. Number 5, do you think it's smarter to stick to one app like DoorDash only and master it, or to multi-app right from the start, and why? All right. I'm going to say, I don't think you need to master it, but I would definitely recommend you start with one app at the very beginning. If like you're just starting, like let's say you've never delivered anything for food or gig delivery, I would start with one app. I think the best app for most people to start on is DoorDash. DoorDash has a lot of problems, but it also has the most orders. And I think DoorDash is the most generous to new drivers. They basically give you all the top perks as a brand new driver on DoorDash. Now, maybe Uber Eats does too, but I know DoorDash promises that. So if you can, but obviously it's whatever is available in your market. But if you had everything at your disposal and you wanted to do food delivery, I would start with either DoorDash or Instacart, or if you could get on a catering, but sometimes that's a little bit a harder thing to do. So either DoorDash or Instacart would be my recommendation for if you could ideally pick one and only one, do that. And I don't think you have to master it, but you should learn it. I would do DoorDash even for a weekend. I think I did Uber Eats for about 2 weeks before I started on DoorDash, just because I wanted to learn one. Um, and I thought it was crazy to like run more than like 2 apps at a time. And now like regularly I'll have 7 apps running. It becomes more and more manageable once you have mastered it. But I would say you want to at least learn the ins and outs of one, because the penalties now, if you're starting today, the penalties now for being late are much more significant than they would have been, say, 2 or 3 years ago when I first started. You could be late, on a fairly regular basis 2 years ago, and it wasn't really going to impact your metrics or too much like that. Nowadays, if you're late on DoorDash, it can be a pain to get rid of those. So I would just recommend you start one. You don't have to master it, but before you multi-app, at least know the basics of how everything works. Like if you're starting with Grubhub, there's a lot of buttons you have to push to accept an order on Grubhub. Like it's really complicated, and they haven't fixed it in like 2 years. Like it's a lot of stuff to do, and the last thing you want to be doing is getting yourself where you're accepting 2 or 3 orders on 2 or 3 different apps all at the same time, and then you're late for every one of them, and then you've got angry customers and your first reviews are negative. Learn one, learn it well, and then you can slowly expand based on whatever your goals are and your expertise. All right, number 6. And you guys can chime in on this one too. This is a good question, I think, for everybody here. I've heard people say delivery work isn't sustainable long term because of wear and tear on your car. Based on your experience, is that true, or can it actually work if you manage it right? I would say this is highly dependent. This is my opinion. This is the answer to this question is highly dependent on your life situation. If you are a single college kid and you're looking to pick up an extra 20, 30 hours of work a week, and you want to have a flexible schedule, but you really want to be able to, and it's great, like you want to just get out there, pound the pavement Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, take a bunch of orders. I think you could probably still, I'm not saying pay your college tuition on this, but your day-to-day living expenses while you're in college, get your food, have a little fun money and different things like that. I think that would be good. If you're wanting to do this seriously long-term as full-time with a family as a primary income, that is very difficult to do. If you're going to do that, I would highly recommend some combination of Instacart and catering as your primary, and then have food delivery as like a secondary for evenings. I do think Instacart's probably the most sustainable. So Lisa says in 8 years, she's been able to manage with routine car maintenance. Again, a lot depends on what you're starting with. For me, I got a 2004 Pontiac Vibe, and we've been on a pretty good stretch, but we're to the point where we need some repairs again. But again, I'm driving a car with 250,000 miles on it. So everything has to do with kind of your individual circumstance. I think if you're starting with something good, I would definitely not recommend full time with only one vehicle. If you're like a family, like we are, that's what we've been doing. It's been very difficult. We've managed it, but I wouldn't recommend it to anybody either. So I do think the maintenance and the miles, the dollars per mile stuff, I think some of that stuff is a little bit overblown. Um, if you just make good, wise decisions about picking up and dropping off at locations, pick up at good locations, drop off at locations that are close to new pickups. I think a lot of that is there, but I think some of this whole idea of maintenance and tax write-offs, I think people are a little bit confused about how all of that works. In that, not that the numbers they don't understand. It's not that they don't understand the numbers, but they don't understand the repercussions of the number. Just because you're writing off the miles doesn't mean you're not actually making the money. And I think that's an interesting thing. Now, I might actually be trying to do some stuff with a rental car here, so that's kind of that's up in the air. But our car does need to go in the shop for some repairs shortly, and but I might actually try doing some rental stuff. Um, there's a guy on YouTube he's been talking about, he does rideshare, Uber rideshare, and his videos have been popping up and very interesting. He does all of his stuff through rental. His name is Daddy O Money. Daddy O Money. Um, so I'll post a link this if you guys want to check him out if you are interested in Daddy. And his whole thing, he does Uber rideshare, and he does it with all through the Uber rental, and he makes a defense of why he likes delivering in a rental car and the pros and cons of that. So there are different perspectives out there, but I mean, again, if I've been able to sustain it 2.5 years with a 2004 Pontiac Vibe, like the negative is it's an old car, so I can't do rideshare in it, but I think it's sustainable, and that car was not in great shape. But we do recommend on this channel that you have at least $1,000 emergency car fund funded as well. So, yeah, Lisa, there's both. I would if you want to, I'd watch some of Daddy O's videos. I mean, he makes a compelling case, and I would say especially if you're not in a position to get a new car and you want to do rideshare, it's definitely one thing to consider with it. Now, he's talking specifically about renting through the Uber rental program. So anyway, do your research. For anyone watching, there's a lot of different perspectives on it. I have delivered in a rental car when my car's been in the shop, and that there is a benefit to it because you don't have to worry about the depreciation at all, and all of your gas becomes a tax write-off. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So anyway, good thoughts. If you're watching on replay too, just throw your comments down below. And if you're watching live, you should be able to, or if you're watching on replay, you should be able to see the live conversation as well. All right. With Grubhub, Uber Eats, and Doordash all running promos at different times, how do you decide which app to run on a Friday night when they're all competing for your time? Okay, so a couple things. One, in my market, the promos are horrible. I mean, every once in a while, I get peak pay, on Doordash or Uber Eats, but it's usually like $1 or $2. It's usually not significant. The only time we see significant bumps in pay is like if there's a hurricane coming through, that's when we see a big bump in pay for the most part. Excuse me. But the simple answer is once you're adept at running them, just run them all. Just turn them all on and let them run. And you're not yes, they're competing for you and your time, but that's not really what it is. They're auditioning for a role in your delivery night. And so that's the way I go out every day. I have plans and I have goals of places that I think are going to work based on the day, the time of day, and all those things. But ultimately, in the moment, it's like I might tell you Grubhub is not my best app, but there have been individual nights where Grubhub sends me 3 or 4 great orders, and I do mostly Grubhub. Now, that night might be once every 3 months that I get a night like that, but I don't look at it that I'm working for the apps. I look at it, these apps are working for me. And so I'm going to go out, and I always start my day. My assumption at the beginning of the day is I'm going to keep my eyes open and hope a catering order comes through. We got one today. It was actually one of the better catering orders I've had in a while. It was $40, and then they did a $20 cash tip. So I think it was like in total it was like 61 or something. My best catering order that I'd had in a while. So I'm keeping my eyes open for a catering order, and I'm starting my day with I'm trying to find good Instacart orders at the beginning of the day. So from the start of the day till a catering order, try to do as many Instacarts as I can. Then usually after the catering order, I'll run Instacart, but then I'll try to grab a couple of lunch orders. And then after that, I'll kind of focus on Instacart again throughout the afternoon. That's what my average day looks like. Now on a Saturday, it's going to be a little bit different. But um, on a weekday, that's what I'm trying to do is I don't look at it that they're competing for my time so much as they're auditioning for me to star them in this role in my life. So that's the way I look at it is like I'm not beholden to anyone. Now there are certain times you're having to look at certain metrics. So I spent a lot of time last week doing Instacart because I needed to get to 300 deliveries to unlock Diamond because you're either in or you're out for 3 months. And I was like, I needed to have it. Or I really wanted to have it for fourth quarter this year. And so I just, in those days, I turned off everything else because Instacart was my goal. This week, though, now that I'm already a Diamond shopper, I'm just running everything. And this evening, I did all DoorDash was my supper. I only did like 3 or 4 orders, but it was just all DoorDash, and we did them, got them done during the day. It was mostly Instacart, a couple of DoorDashes, but mostly Instacart and a catering order. So you just kind of have to juggle with all of that. So all right, number 8. This would be another great feedback question for all of you guys. What does tipping really look like right now in late 2025? Are customers getting more generous, less, or about the same compared to a few years ago? Um, this is just my observation from my area. I'm not seeing an increase in no tip orders in general. But I am seeing people capping their tips a lot more. Tips around me, most people are capping their tips for like restaurant delivery about $10. I It used to be if you saw a large catering order on DoorDash, which is an order of at least $100 or more, that was almost always guaranteed at least a $20 tip 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Like it was pretty much just locked in. You see a large catering order, you knew you were going to get paid at least 22 bucks, at least $2 base pay, sometimes 8 if it was a true catering order, plus $20 tip. That was pretty consistent. Now, the vast majority of large catering orders I see are right around that $12 range. So a lot of people have just capped their tips at 10 bucks. They don't, whether it's $200 in food, $100 in food, or $450 in food. A lot of people on DoorDash, Uber Eats, Instacart. Now, are there still unicorns out there? Absolutely. And it is still a slower time in my market. We're picking up. We're really close to it turning around. But I don't know. I haven't noticed an uptick in no tippers. I haven't even noticed that the median, the middle of the road tip. I don't think that's really changed. And most people tip around $5 consistently. But I've noticed that the high end, on average, the average high tips are not anywhere near as high as they used to be, and that's even being, platinum on DoorDash and stuff like that. Now, I have no access to any of the good orders on Uber Eats right now, so maybe I'll try to get to a top tier on Uber Eats. But I don't know. Let me know what have you guys seen? Have you seen any difference in tips? Um, I One thing I have noticed though, this is not directly tip related, but is payout related. DoorDash is more and more bumping pay for longer deliveries. Like I had one tonight. I think I screenshotted it. Yeah, I had one tonight. It was a 1650. It was from a good restaurant and it went like 12 miles, so it was a pretty long delivery. And it was not like it was priority. Like it I don't know, sorry. Does that go this way? The base pay for it was 11.50 with a $5 tip. So I took it as 16.50 thinking, hey, hey, that's not bad. 16.50 for 12 miles. And it's a Thursday night. It's a slower night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, midweek. It's not a weekend night. So I took it to stay busy. And that's not the first time. I've seen multiple orders, especially once they start hitting over that $10 mark, that DoorDash is realizing like these are still pretty good customers, but we're not getting the orders to the good customers because just it's not there. Yes, we're live, Bree. How's it going? Hope you are doing well. So we are live right now. Now to you watching on replay, it's not live, but for you, Bree, we are live. So I don't know. Let me know. Have you guys seen a difference in tipping? Um, so all right. Number 9, when you talk about delivery as a side hustle, what's the best practice for turning it into a consistent income stream instead of just random extra cash? work it like a real job. This is true about anything. This is true about eBay and trying to get the eBay store going. It's true about YouTube if you want to run a full business full time on YouTube. It's true about food and gig delivery. You want to do it. You, so yeah, no, we're just answering questions. So I'm just going through a list of questions I have trying to help new younger drivers, people who are just getting started. I'm doing that. So here's what I would say. What you need to know is you need to know how much money you want to make. Okay. Then you need to figure out how much money you realistically can make per hour. Okay. I always say the goal on this channel is $25 an hour. Now, gross, that's not net, gross, 25 an hour. But you might not be able to achieve that in your market. In fact, it might be very beneficial for you to set a significantly lower goal, especially when you start. So say you set a goal at something like 16 an hour gross when you start. So this is how I would do the math to figure out if you want it to be consistent. Let's say you've done the work and you can mix in the numbers, but I'll run the math on 16 an hour because I think most markets, if you are picky as to what you want to do, and then let's just say you need $800 a week. Okay. And $800 gross. Okay. I'm going to keep the math pretty simple here. So you're going to do $800 divided by 16. That means you need to work 50 hours a week. So then what you need to figure out, and this is again, assuming you want to go full time. And I don't really recommend you go full time. You might have to for a season, but let's say you're in the season, you have to, you need to gross 3,200 a month. That way you'll have X number of dollars, whatever it is. Like you got to do the math, but let's just say this is what it is. So that means $800 a week divided by $16 an hour. That means you need to work 50 hours a week. And then you start plotting in your schedule and you figure out, okay, what are the most profitable times for me to go out? And so then you would say something like from 5 to 9. And let's say you want to take Sundays off for this example. So we'll say you take Sundays off. You want to work 5 to 9 every night. Okay. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so that's 6 times 4. That's 24. That's half of your hours, right? You need to do 50 hours a week, and you've already committed to 24 of your 50 hours is from 5 to 9. You're going to be out there 5 to 9 making $16 an hour. That's like supper into late night shift. Okay, so you're working a full-time job or whatever. Okay, then in addition, you're going to say maybe work all day Saturday. Okay, so then you can add another 8 hours on for Saturday. So now you're at 32. Well, now you got to figure out where those other 18 hours coming from. Do you have flexibility where you can go out and you can work lunch shift and do 2 hours a day for lunch shift? That would be 5 more days. That would get you 10 more hours. Or are you going to get up super early and do some work at say 5 a.m. Go out, deliver from 5 to 7 and get a handful more hours, get 10 hours in that way. So you just got to go reverse engineer the math, figure out how much do you need to gross, and then figure out how much are you able to gross. Or if you want to do net, then figure out the net. Doesn't matter. Just do the math. So let's say you need a net 12 an hour, and you can do that if you gross 16 an hour, whatever the numbers say. And then you just reverse engineer and you plot out those hours and you make sure you get it done. And you make sure you get out there and you run those hours. And as you get better, hopefully you can make a little bit more and either work less or you work the same amount and make even more than your 800. And then that kind of frees you up and gives you a little bit of flexibility. But yeah, if you don't want it to be random, you can't live a random schedule. So, and then transitioning out, it's kind of the same thing. That's kind of the mode that I'm in right now, where all the food and gig delivery pays the bills, but I don't want it to be paying the bills a year from now. I want eBay to be paying the bills. And so I'm slowly transitioning out from food and gig delivery. So like Monday is usually, now this week it wasn't because I needed to make a little extra money because rent was due. So I was like, okay, I got to go out and I got to so I gave up my sourcing for eBay on Monday that I would normally do and did that. So that's what I'm doing. But normally it's like Monday is going to be my eBay day. And then a lot of times for me, I'll go out and I'll source afternoons from like 2 to 3:30 or 1:30 to 3:30 after lunch. If it's really slow, I don't want to be sitting and waiting for an hour and a half in a parking lot or whatever. I'd rather just go hit a thrift store and go find stuff. So I can use that dead time instead of just sitting there doing nothing or taking $3 orders all afternoon. I can go and use that time as thrift store time when it's a little bit slower. So, but you got to plan it out. If you want consistent income stream, then you got to have a consistent work stream that goes with it. All right, question number 10, and then we'll take any other questions from the live chat. Please hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're doing 10 questions about food and gig delivery. All right. How do you personally integrate customer service with your faith? Like, have you ever had a delivery where it felt it was more about serving the person than just dropping off the food? Yeah, we hit on this a little bit earlier, but absolutely, there are multiple times. I mean, I've delivered to people the same day that they've had a loved one die, the same day they've had a pet die. Um, you have to realize that a lot of times you're bringing food or something to a party or to a celebration, but other times you're bringing food that's literally they ordered it as medication. And that's, and I don't mean it like as medicine, but they're doing it to just cheer themselves up because they've had a really bad day, a really rough day. And most people aren't going to tell you all those details, but I've had those conversations. And so um, the way I do it is, even if a delivery seems like it's going sideways, once I've picked up the order, I'm all in for that customer. Even if it's a bad low tipping order, it's a bad delivery, even if I would not choose to take that order again the next time, a long wait at the restaurant, I try to be all in for the customer in that moment. And even like I said, even if it's not an order that I would want to take in the future, I still will do my best in that moment to serve the customer, try to figure out what it is. There's lots of simple things you can do. This goes with like Instacart, but let's say, a lot of times I'll still get it, once or twice a month. I'll get somebody ordering a COVID test and, Theraflu or, something like that. So I'll always just send a note, hey, hope everybody feels better soon. Something simple like that, where you're just saying, like, you realize that this is a real person that you're delivering to who has a real problem, and try to be a blessing. There was even one time that I actually had extra Gatorade in my car and I delivered to someone, and it was like all the common sick stuff: medicine, COVID tests, crackers, chicken noodle soup. And I threw in an extra Gatorade that was from my own thing. Like, I don't, just as a, hey, I just hope you feel better. Hope this helps, that sort of thing. And you do it sometimes when you do stuff like that, you get extra tips, but I do it even when I don't get extra tips. And I would say a lot of times you don't. You're not going to get an extra tip, but that's not what it's all about. It's also about just serving people the best that you can. We have a whole system that we talk about on here that I try to filter my life through, and we filter this channel through: serve, learn, grow, adapt, freedom. And so that's the first thing. That's how I shop. I shop as if I'm shopping for myself. If you want to get better at shopping for Instacart, just say, what would happen if this order got canceled and I got stuck with all this food? Would I be proud of what I picked out for myself? Would I be picking out the same exact items for my family that I am for this person? And if the answer is no, that means I'm not serving that other person. And so, like, the biblical principle is love your neighbor as yourself. Okay, so then if you want to do that, then just shop for yourself. Say, okay, this is my grocery list. And if I needed this ingredient and I couldn't find it, then what would I get as a replacement? Right. So, the other day someone wanted fresh thyme. They didn't have any fresh thyme. So if I needed thyme for a recipe and they said pick a replacement, what would I get? Well, I would go get dried thyme, right? Because then there's a way that you can reconstitute it. It's not quite as good as fresh, but you can get the same basic flavorings out of it by soaking it in oil or water or whatever it is. So then you go get the thing that the person needs. And this becomes especially true. It's true with everything, but I would say especially true as you get towards the holidays. When you're shopping for someone, let's say you're doing a Thanksgiving order for someone and they order stuffing, like stovetop stuffing, and that particular one is sold out. That doesn't mean just, oh, they didn't have it, refund it, even though they want a replacement. No, like, think about it. Like, okay, they didn't have the stuffing I wanted. What would I pick? What would be the next best option that I could possibly pick? So, bought a bag of ice for a customer whose ice maker broke and couldn't add it to the order. Your tip went from 5 to 15. Yeah, absolutely. If you do this long enough, I'm not, and no one would tell you to, like, put yourself in financial difficulties. Like, that reminds me of a time um, I picked up, what was it from? I think it was from a burrito place, and they wanted root beer, and they were out of root beer. So I just said, "Hey, sorry, they're out of your drink." And I just stopped at the gas station on the way to them, and I picked up a 2-liter bottle of root beer and just picked it up and dropped it off and delivered it to them. And so, and I think on that one I paid like $3 because it's from a gas station and they upped the tip $2. So I technically lost a dollar, but I did what was right in that situation for me. Now, had I been really behind, if it this and again, these are some of the things that DoorDash is pushing out because of the speed and the on-time ratings. I couldn't do that now. I'm not going to risk the income, the business side of a late delivery on doing that anymore. But that's what you used to be able to do. And there are still times and opportunities that you can sometimes do that. Bree, you bought a bag of ice with your red card. There you go. Yeah, so there's lots of things that you can do to bless other people. We've done thank you cards sometimes, get well soon cards. Again, not buying them, just like handmade ones. And I have a whole bunch that I bought. I really want to get back to doing that a lot more, because I think it's good for tips and customer service, but it's also just a blessing to other people. And um, I mean, I actually started shopping for someone individually. I went through Instacart originally, and then eventually, because I was willing to go to another store. This was last January, February, because they were sold out of eggs. This is when there were no eggs anywhere. So I went to another store where I knew they had eggs, and I bought eggs for them. Um, and then they just paid me back in cash there because they wanted like 60 eggs or something like that, like 5 dozen eggs. So they paid me back in cash, and then it ended up that I ended up just shopping for them. They would just text me a list. I'd go shop for them, and then they'd pay it out and reimburse me, and made extra money that way. Yeah, now they were out of town. I don't know if they're going to be back in town this winter or not, but it was really cool. For about like a month and a half, I was a personal shopper for someone just because I went over and above the first time because there was a need. They needed eggs. The store didn't have eggs. I went to do it. Now, I kind of took a little bit of a risk in trusting them because I was delivering to like a $10 million home. So I figured they could afford the eggs. But that the point is you're just looking for those opportunities to do that. So, all right. Well, before we wrap things up, give you just another minute here to post any other questions that you might have. Like I said, if you're watching this on replay, go ahead, post your comments and questions down in the comments, and then maybe your question will be featured the next time we do this. I really like this question and answer format. It's a little more guided than the way we used to do things, and at the same time, it doesn't take a ton of prep on my part because I don't have a lot of extra time. So we're going to try to figure out a way to do this a little bit more often. Like I said, we did this yesterday on eBay. We answered 10 beginner questions for eBay, maybe 11. I think there was an extra one that came through. So we did that, but we're working on a lot of different things on the channel. I'm kind of taking a break from the actual live ride-alongs right now because I just can't give people enough of a focus for what it is. So yeah, that's awesome, Lisa. And it all depends on what it was. At that point in time, 5 dozen eggs, I could not afford that. I was like, it was like $40 or something like that. It was expensive. But yeah, like, and that's the same thing. Like, if I do something, unless it's agreed upon, I don't ever assume they're going to pay. I asked like, hey, if I go and do this, would you be willing to reimburse me? And they said yes. So, but that's for a big thing. For small stuff, $5 or less. Yeah, like the root beer, I didn't ask for reimbursement. Just gave it, did it. And you just kind of know you're going to get good vibes with certain people and know certain situations to do that. So first of all, thank you to all the channel members, including Lisa. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. And if you guys want to help this channel out and help us keep growing, feel free to become a channel member. We'd love to have you on board with that. We're still continuing with our eBay updates, and not just the question and answer, but also all the things that we're covering on the things that we're selling in the store, so you can follow along that. I'm trying a fun little experiment about doubling my money with ad revenue from eBay. So I started a fun little series today on that. Lots of other things. And then we are going to get the Patreon up and rolling. I know the Patreon's been kind of dead here for pretty much this whole calendar year. I think the last post I made was on Christmas of last year. So, but we are going to get the Patreon up and running again, have some fun stuff coming up in there as well. So we'll do that. But again, please hit the like, hit the subscribe as we keep on growing the channel. We are really close to 2,000 subscribers. We're 27 away. We're up 1 from this stream tonight, I believe. So yeah, we are 27 away. We're at 1973. So we'll be looking forward to hopefully have a fun little celebration when we hit the 2,000 subscriber marker. Do a countdown if we get really close. So, all right. If there are any other questions, let me know. But otherwise, we're going to go for now. and I appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll be definitely doing some other. It's not just going to be eBay. We'll kind of have it in the title. So we'll do eBay. We're going to do food and gig delivery question and answer. We'll do some faith question and answer stuff. Kind of this whole soul, heart, mind, strength, wallet. We're going to kind of do question and answers on each of these different areas. And always just feel free to watch and chime in on the streams that you want to, and those you don't, that's fine as well. All right. Well, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. And I hope this was beneficial to you. And we will talk to you again soon. Have a good night, everybody.